Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure and privilege as Mayor of the City of Vader to welcome all in attendance at this regularly scheduled City Council meeting. Especially grateful to have our elected officials and City Council members present. So with an obvious quorum, I'll call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. I would invite our City Clerk to engage in our roll call.
Sure, I would like to do that on September 14th, 2017.
Yes, it's officially noted for the record. Thank you.
Okay. Andy Wilson?
Present.
Jason Daly?
Here.
Joe Shy?
Present.
Mike Parsons?
Here.
Leona Sander Hunter? Present. I got it right. Mayor Ken Smith?
Also present.
Okay, everyone's here.
Good. And then with that, would invite all to please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. And, we invite you to
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll proceed with our agenda. First item, of course, is the Mayor's report. I'd like to begin by reporting that we had 37 volunteers in our community this past Saturday, and they engaged in some landscaping around the community, and the principal project was painting the jail building, and it got 3/4 of the way done till we ran out of paint, but we didn't run out of bodies. We had 23 representatives from the Castle Rock School District, the entire girls soccer team, plus the coaches. So I think it's, and we have Jim Mabbitt, who we recognize your presence here with us, the superintendent of the Castle Rock School District. Thank you for being here and sending those wonderful high school students to help.
Happy to be here, and they're hard workers.
I would think that we would be appropriate to give you a round of applause. But Polo Totai, who was overseeing the painting projects, will complete the painting of the jail within the next week or so, maybe even before this week is out, as I understand rains are coming. But we also painted all but I think 1.5 of the picnic tables in Worden Park and McMurphy Park. So I think they're now winterized for the winter months. So with that, then the second item I wanted to report on was an update on our preschool. And maybe it would be better to get it straight from the superintendent's mouth on this.
I thought you were going to say the horses.
Well, I was thinking of it, but then I figured discretion.
No, I'll be happy to. We've been a little frustrated because the main thing holding us up is we can't find the old sewer line. And without a sewer line, we can't. I talked to the building inspector and I said, so how would you feel with a preschool if we had an outhouse out there? No, that's not going to work. So I tried.
Yeah.
So we've got to find the sewer line, or we've got to put in a pump system that will be pretty expensive. But if we have to, that's what we'll wind up doing. But I'm trying to, we've had a number of people who said they thought it was here, they thought it was there, and we dug and not there. So we can't find any plans that anyone has, whether it's our school district or the city of Vader. We can't find it. So any help I can get on finding that, I would be thrilled. Beyond that, we'd be ready to go. I have made a decision that even though we have, and with the mayor's help and others, the city's help, we've had flyers all over the place. We've had the big sign up on the building, and we still have the most we could possibly get. The last time I looked, it would be 6 kids, probably 5. And so instead of 2 staff members, what I'm willing to do is hire 1 full-time person and start that preschool. And then maybe if we build it, they will come.
That's right.
Yeah, I hope so. I'll be honest, I mean, I was disappointed that we didn't get 8 kids, but you know what, we'll do what we want, what we can do. And then we also, we want to start looking into whether a community school for classes for adults is an option here, whether we ought to do something with GED program. I know that both of those suggestions have been made here. So we have all that on our radar, but the first thing I've got to do is get that building with sewer, plumbing. Plumbing's not a problem, we'll have the water, sewer, and then get power attached to it. We have an engineer now that has to do some work of making sure that it's all the way it should be, but I already know it is. But as soon as that engineer does all of his work, I think that'll eliminate the majority of questions that came from the city of Vader. So I think we're close, and I'm frustrated with the sewer.
Didn't all out sewer scope anywhere near there or anything like that that could be?
All out sewer?
I don't know.
No,
We
not
did our
heard.
sewer scoping for our
Oh,
cleanouts.
yeah. We've looked through all those videos and haven't found where that connection might have been made. We've watched them and
Yeah.
watched them again and watched them, tried to guess and figure it, but we haven't been able to figure it out.
Yeah, we've checked with, there is one other potential source that the superintendent for last may have an idea where that sewer line is at, and we haven't reached out to contact that person yet.
Okay.
Maybe we should.
Okay.
You had a comment?
I believe that the contractor was digging this way too far, because, and it used to be that if you can find where the old entrance is, if I can remember where the entrance is, the sewer line came right out, right there, and it would only be wouldn't be very deep there. But where they're digging, I know that it has.
Was it near the rose? Remember the rose garden?
Huh?
Remember the rose garden that was there?
Yeah.
It's still there. Is it near that?
The what?
The rose garden.
Well, the definitive source was Tommy Spain, and Tommy Spain is one who laid the line. He recalled distinctly that it ran kitty corner to the stop sign on D Street and down to the main sewer line on 8th Street. And so Tommy went out there and he even water witched. And he pointed to the ground and he got, from his perspective, definitive readings and marked the line.
And we
then-
dug
And you dug.
all around
And
it.
dug. Yep. So I think what we need to do is find what out in the field where the school was. And the previous superintendent, I believe, may be able to point to a spot. And the question is how deep it was.
Yeah.
So, but it is a problem. And thank you for your patience. And,
Well, thank you for your patience.
we're doing everything we can to support this project.
Oh, I know, and it's going to happen. It is going to happen. There's enough passion to make it happen. It's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about the kids that signed up this year? Are they still?
What I did is I had my assistant call them all the other day and said, hold on, we're trying to make it work. So 5 out of the 6 said they're holding on.
Okay.
So,
I got one other thing, is that I gave Judy Costello an old set of water plans that I found. We found a drawing where the water line was on that plan there, and she was gonna call, what is it, Vesuvic?
I called them and they never called.
A long time
Yeah.
ago,
Mm.
but the
Okay.
water plans I had, and I have almost all the plans from the city.
Yeah, okay. Well, we have 2 comments from the public. Would council care to address those during this phase of our agenda? Okay.
In our profession as electricians, my husband suggested that you might want to start at the sewer main, which is back behind Liana's house, and run a wire through there and tick the wire, and then you would be able to see where the line is. Go to the other direction and head that way.
We've got video inside that pipe, right, that we inspected.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
there was no inlet coming into that pipe
We
anywhere.
haven't been able to figure out where that side sewer connected to the main even.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to determine that. So,
So it's a mystery.
yeah.
There's got to be a solution. One other comment?
I just wondered if the company that did the demolition had been contacted. That they may know where they disconnected and tore it apart.
You know, I talked to one of my friends, Jimmy Finnison. He was in charge of that, not the contractor, but the person on the site that was tearing it apart. And he couldn't recall where it was either. But
Yeah. That was before
Yeah,
my
we-
time, so I'm not sure.
We contacted the person who was supervising the demolition and couldn't remember.
Okay, well, but we will reach out to that, to the previous superintendent. See what we can learn. Okay, with that, thank you for that report.
Before we move on, I spoke to you about possibilities, options on that one corner where people are running the stop signs.
Yes.
Yes. Have you come up with any maybes or options or?
Not yet, no. But it's, I'm sure.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Alrighty, well then, the third item, I felt prompted to place it on my particular report. It's a response to the previous public comment. I wasn't present at that meeting, but I apologize to Mr. Shai, who is the mayor pro tem, who stepped up and conducted that meeting. I appreciate that. Welcome. But I was able to read the minutes of the meeting and was prompted to contemplate that perhaps it would be appropriate before we proceed with tonight's meeting to remind the council that the city council meeting, according to the Code City guidelines, is a meeting that's held for the public to participate in. And it's your meeting. And it's been, I think, a standard for the city of Vader to enjoy and hear and invite members of the public to, for 3 minutes, which are standard operating procedure for most cities, to hear comments from the public. But that we as a city honor that. It's a freedom that we treasure in this nation that's governed by laws, and particularly the Constitution. So, but we also, being a code city, apply the guidelines that most cities and city councils implement. And my distinct sense was that it may be necessary to remind the council that those who are in charge, the guidelines require that the mayor be the moderator. It's not something that most mayors enjoy doing. It just comes with the territory. And so when the council, when the mayor's absence, I hope would remember the guidelines that are in place so that our meetings are civil and respectful and don't violate decorum and decency. And here are our guidelines. I'd just like to remind everyone. Each person shall step to the podium and give his or her name. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. All remarks shall be addressed to the council as a body and not to a single member thereof. No questions shall be asked of the council members except through the chair if questions arise. No person other than the chair, the moderator, the mayor, members of the council, and the person having the floor shall be permitted to enter into any discussion, either directly or through the members of the council. It's not intended to engage in a debate process. These are not our rules. These are from the Association of Washington City MRSC guidelines. And lastly, personal and slanderous remarks. Any person making personal, impertinent, and impertinent, if you're not sure of that definition, means rude or insolent, lacking proper respect, or out of place, or absurd. Absurd meaning unreasonable, illogical, or ludicrous, or ridiculous, or laughable. In case there's a misunderstanding of impertinent. Or slanderous remarks or who shall become boisterous while addressing the council may be requested to leave the meeting and may be barred from further audience before the council during that council meeting by the chair or presiding officer. So these are the guidelines that the City Council has embraced, and most Association of Washington Cities apply them in their City Council meetings. Public comment is a courtesy allowed by the Council and is not a mandatory requirement. So with that, I hope that we can embrace the opportunity to provide public comment, but keep it within the parameters that are most common in most American cities. So with that, I would conclude my mayor's report and then invite the council, if you have any comments, to at this time use your agenda item. Any reports from the council members? Okay. And with that, then let's proceed with our official agenda.
I just,
Oh,
real
yes,
quick,
yes,
I'd
Mike,
like
I'm
to,
sorry. You bet.
Take note that the phone bill has been paid, Andy.
Oh, did you hear that? Mr. Parsons reminded you that his phone bill has been paid.
Okay, well, thank you.
Betcha. Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Mike, for that. Appreciate it. Now let's,
No big deal.
we await council action on the agenda approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written for the date of September 14th, 2017.
We've heard the motion submitted by Mr. Schy to approve tonight's City Council meeting agenda as written. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Now the minutes for the previous City Council meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the council meeting on 8/24/2017.
Okay, and Mr. Daly has submitted a motion to approve those minutes as written. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Seconded by Leona. All in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay. Now our voucher approvals for 1st of September 2017.
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers for the 1st of September 2017 in the amount of $30,041.19.
Okay, Mr. Schy submitted that motion as noted to approve the vouchers as stated. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Leona. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, it's now our privilege to hear a couple of special reports. First, we'll hear from Deputy Cheeseman from our Lewis County Sheriff's Office and a report on our August activities.
You guys got that? Yes, you did.
So, August was a busy month for calls, although the calls were basically a lot of just information, civil deals. We did have 2 vandalism cases which weren't solved. So we had 311 contacts, 26 total calls for the month, and then 15 traffic stops, 2 infractions. So there's some infractions there. And to answer your question, for up to July, 3 infractions and 6 criminal traffics. So, and I think that you guys are getting off scot-free on the criminal traffics because I think they all went through district court, so you didn't get a jail booking or anything else on it. So, and then there was 1 felony warrant arrest and a misdemeanor arrest. So,
Okay, great. Okay. Any
questions?
comments from the council? All righty. Thank you very much for that report. Appreciate it and the service you're providing. All right. Well, it's now our opportunity. This is a long-awaited report from our Civil West Engineering Company, who's going to provide us the latest regarding our waste treatment options and alternatives.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Want to present basically a summary of the report that was provided to you guys about a month ago, and walk through that real quick and answer any questions that you may have. We'll go through sort of the same agenda that we did before quickly and just summarize the process that we went through. We looked at alternate collection systems, which would include a pressurized collection system, which would replace the gravity system. We looked at grinder pumps, at a step system, and a vacuum system. Those all ended up being very expensive and costed themselves out. They were above $5 million, and that was just the collection system. So those we looked at. We thought it might be a way to reduce the size of the treatment plant, but the cost of doing this alone was too much. We looked at alternate considerations for where to take the water. This was done in previous reports as well. The Cowlitz River was recommended in one of the earlier reports, but the advantages of going to the Cowlitz River were negated when the Department of Ecology changed the rules on what's allowable to discharge in the Cowlitz River. So that additional cost to get it there was negated. The Olakwa Creek is still a valid place to discharge, although in the summer it gets tight because there's so little water in there. There's not a lot of available mixing, and the water's already pretty warm. So there are hurdles to go through in order to discharge to the Olakwa Creek. We looked at alternatives to discharging to a surface water altogether. Those included land irrigation during the summer. We looked at potentially irrigating the forest property across the river. That ended up being too steep and too rocky to be a viable option. There was a viable option on the Jorgensen timberland, which is 2 to 2.5 miles north of town. There's a flat area that had good soil properties, but it would take 2 pump stations to get it there. And so it's still a viable option. It's still one of the things that we looked at and one of the options that we have in front of you. But it was $1.7 to $2 million to get it up there. So these are the requirements to discharge into the Olakwa. There are copper requirements that will be coming, that we'll be looking to meet. Ammonia requirements, which are not there now, that we're not dealing with, and then temperature requirements, which I mentioned in the summer is very difficult to meet. Those are all treatable, but they all cost a little bit of money. So we looked at different treatment methods. An activated sludge plant, which is one of the most basic types of treatment plants, is more advanced than only lagoons. Lagoons are your basic treatment that's been around forever. It goes into the lagoon, it mixes a little bit, and the bugs eat everything, and it gets cleaned up. It's very low tech, but it works. It doesn't get the level of treatment that's required to discharge to the Olakwa by itself. So one of the options that was identified in earlier reports and we looked at again was lagoon upgrades. And what this would do would be to take the existing lagoons, dredge them out, reline them, put a baffle curtain down the middle, and aerate one side, aerate the next side differently, and have the wastewater go from one cell to the other, and with a total of 4 different cells. That different levels of aeration would allow treatment to treat for many of the different parameters that you need to treat for in order to discharge. So we looked at lagoon upgrades. we looked at lagoon upgrades with land treatment. Land treatment would be the discharge to the timber property. With a constructed wetland, what we would propose to do there is to take the third big lagoon, decommission it as a treatment lagoon, and regrade it and use that as a constructed wetland to do tertiary treatment to the wastewater after it's gone through the upgraded lagoon. It's a pretty cheap option to add on, but it's a little bit unknown as to everything that it can accomplish.
Can you explain a little bit more, because this is the first time that we've heard that
Yeah,
term,
so the last lagoon is larger. Right now, the water goes through that. It sits in the lagoon and gets heated up, and so you end up with very warm discharges. What we were thinking is we eliminate that lagoon from the treatment process. Instead, we recreate a wetland, which would be like a small little serpentine river that would go through there. You'd have plants growing over to provide shade. Those plants would pull additional nutrients out of the wastewater, which is what you want. It's a little difficult because if you let those plants grow too much and die, then they put nutrients back into the water. So it's a maintenance thing that you got to let those grow and you got to trim them.
Would there be potential odor in that process?
No, it actually is a very clean and natural process. There is some odor in the regular lagoon process, but if it's operating correctly, that is very minimal. So the cost of a constructed wetland is mostly just a grading exercise of grading this little stream that goes through that area and planting it with some wetland native plants. The associated maintenance that would go on would be going in there a few times a year and trimming it back and cleaning it up so that those nutrients don't go back into the waste flow. That was one of the options that we looked at kind of towards the end. That is in the report, but I hadn't discussed previously. There's also so we talked about the land treatment, the constructed wetlands. We have a constructed wetlands and land treatment where we run through the wetland and still land discharge. And then the constructed wetland with additional treatment, and that additional treatment is the mechanical methods of removing the copper and the ammonia and temperature, which actually runs it through a chiller. So it's pretty energy intensive to get that additional treatment. What we propose, obviously the cheapest method up here is the lagoon upgrades with constructed wetlands, and that's what we're proposing that the city does, and we would do that. We propose that happens sort of in phases. The first phase being you construct the lagoon upgrade and monitor that and see what the quality of the wastewater coming out of that is, and if you're close to or barely exceeding permit levels, then we think that a constructed wetland can help push you over the edge and get you in compliance. If you're still quite a ways off, then our next best method is either the additional treatment or the land discharge. And those are both close enough that we want to look at those again at the time and see which one is most viable. So that gives you the option of being able to go down a path that's the cheapest option, see what the results are, monitor it for maybe a year, and then determine which of these additional treatment paths is most appropriate. So in the costs that we've looked at and in the modeling of financing and what this will do to the rates, we've assumed that you would do the lagoon upgrades with the constructed wetland. So we've already put in that second step, that phase 1B of doing the constructed wetlands.
Do you think the constructed wetlands would address the future ecology restrictions for PCBs, mercury, and others?
Well, what we're looking at in terms of future from ecology is that copper limit. I mean, that's the big one that they had, and there have been wetlands that have done treatment that have removed copper. It's wetland treatment is not a exact science, and so what it can do is a bit up in the air. But like I said, I think if you're close to those limits, I think it's worth doing that and using that.
Can I ask a question or make a comment? I guess part of the beauty of that is that we don't know what our copper limits are. We don't know if we're exceeding them. We have no idea. We haven't done any testing because we haven't been required to, so we don't even know if that's an issue for us or not. And so that year of testing and seeing how the upgrade works would be beneficial to see where we are at with that, and then know if we need to move forward.
And that would be the same for ammonia and for temperature, because you're changing how the treatment plant is going to work. It's not going to sit out in the sun like it was through that last lagoon, and so you may be fine on temperature without having to do anything. So, and ecology has said that they will approve a phased approach to getting there, and so this is what we're proposing as sort of a phase 1 and phase 1B. Phase 2 would be if we have to go to the additional treatment and use more mechanical means, filters and chillers in order to get there. So we looked at how is this going to impact the rates, and we looked at 4 different rate scenarios, and if you look in the report that got sent to you, these are going to be a little bit different. Kathy from the Department of Commerce had some comments, and so I've changed this around a little bit based on her comments. I'll give you guys a revised chapter that includes this. So scenario number 1 is 100% of the project cost is funded by municipal bonds, and I don't know. Kathy didn't think the municipal bonds is an avenue that the city would want to go down, but this would be a very similar if we went with a standard loans. They're a little bit higher than some of the loans available from Ecology and from USDA, but it gets us a good idea. So this scenario, you get a loan or bonds and you repay that over 20 years. I've made the assumption that it's a 5% interest rate, which is relatively high, but I think it's going to get us in the ballpark. Other loan packages are lower. Scenario 2 is 50% of the cost is funded through grants. Commerce has given us a package of different grants. Ecology has 2 programs that provide some grants. Rural development has some programs that provide grants. So scenario 2 is 50% grant, 50% loan. And that loan is paid off over 20 years. Scenario 3 is 50% grant, and then of the other 50%, there's another $750,000 grant from the Community Development Block Grant. So this would be 50% grant from Ecology, 50% grant from the CDBG. Obviously, this has higher amounts of grants, so it's going to be your lowest cost option. So then the remainder of that fund would be paid with a loan, and that loan would be repaid over 20 years. The last scenario is 100% of the project cost is funded through a 40-year low interest rate, low interest loan from USDA. That's a rate of 2.75. They go as low as 2% based on your need and what the financial ability of the city to repay. So we look at these different scenarios. Our construction cost is $3.4 million. We have contingencies, engineering, legal, administrative. So our total to be financed is the $4.54 million, which is the number from the previous slides. That was the lagoon upgrades with constructed wetland. We have zero grant in scenarios 1 and 4, and different grants in scenarios 2 and 3. Basically, these trickle down. This column is your additional monthly rate. This column is your current monthly rates, and so the bottom row is your projected rates. So again, scenario 3, where you have the most grant funding, raises at $39 and puts you at about $97. Until you go and talk to the Department of Ecology and the USDA, we don't know how much grants you qualify for. It may be that you can get 100% grants. It may be that you can only get 25%. I'm pretty certain that you'll get some, but until we take a project to them and make that application, it's just a guess. So now what? The report is complete and submitted to the city, to the Department of Ecology, Department of Commerce. I've got, like I said, comments back from Kathy Reed, Department of Commerce. I'm looking forward to comments back from Ecology and any questions that the council has we can address. The next step would be moving forward into pre-design and taking this and sizing the facilities and determining how big the aerators have to be, how actually doing the pre-design of determining how this is actually going to fit together. That could be started anytime, wrapped up by the middle of next year. Final design could be started before pre-design is complete. You do pre-design on some aspects of it, finish that, and you can start design while you're still doing pre-design on other aspects. So I think there's a little bit of an overlap, but once this pre-design report is complete, then we can apply for the funding and see what we get for grants and loan packages. Final design, if it were to start in February, could be finished by the end of the year, the end of 2018. Go out to bid in the spring of 2019 and construction in the summer of 2019.
It could be finished in 2019.
And
It would be finished by the end of 2019.
and it should be wrapped up by the end of 2018. Yeah.
When would the rates actually take effect for the residents?
So the rates would have to be increased probably in the summer of 2019. Another thing that I modified from what you have in the report was this connection fee. The existing connection fee is $4,000, and I looked at how long that's been $4,000, and it's been for over 15 years, it's been $4,000. And so I looked at what the inflation rate is over the 15 years and adjusted that to be $6,500. So that would be
No.
For new.
for new hookups.
New
And so one of the things, the report looked at how many connections are there hooked up to the system now, and how many could there be in 20 years. And now there's 210, and in 20 years there could be as many as 490. So as those connections come on, people start paying those rates. Everyone else's rates could be lower, depending on when those connections come in. I made the assumption that the rates are based on just the existing connections, that we would not be having any new connections, because that represents the worst case. If between now and 2019 when it starts, there's 10 or 15 more connections, then that reduces it accordingly. If there are big big subdivisions that decide to connect to the system, that would make a big impact to rates, and it would lower the rates for everybody. So obviously the more people that are connected, the more people share that cost, and the lower the rates. But that potential rate that I put here is the worst case scenario. It's based on no new connections.
No new connections and no grants or anything.
Well,
Somehow.
this one is no new connections, but with grants.
Yeah.
I mean, worst case is no new connections and and an expensive loan, which is, this is probably not feasible. But again, we won't know what the grant packages are until you make that application. Any questions?
Okay.
Are we, sorry I didn't hear at the very beginning, are we just talking about treatment, no longer talking about collection, correct?
Correct.
So we're just going to deal with the increase of 1 million gallons or whatever it is during the winter.
Right. Yep. This is just to treat that. What I would recommend is that as you get additional connections, as you get more revenue from more connections, that the city use that additional revenue to look at and combat I&I and reduce that inflow. But that's an ongoing process that every city should be doing all the time, is looking to reduce that flow.
Okay. Well, the most intriguing is the council. Excuse me, pardon, this is council, so this isn't a public hearing, right? This is a report to the council. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But let me entertain a question. Does the council have any comments or questions for Civil West? I would like to respond that we've been at this for 7 or 8 years. You're the third engineering company that has come in, and we've engaged in this struggle, this nightmare process, trying to respond to the Department of Ecology's order that we replace our system, bring it up to compliance. And I can sit here and attest that based on what you've shared with us, and this is almost half the cost of any of the previous estimates that we've received. So from my perspective, as painful as the solution is going to be, it's the least painful of any that I've seen. And it's half the cost of the City of Toledo's solution, and 1/4 the cost of Wenlock's solution. So I tip my hat to. Now it would seem to me that it's incumbent upon our elected officials and our administration to find the funding to the maximum amount possible. So I would share that from my perspective, having sat in this seat throughout this laborious challenge. Now, we do have David Dunn seated in the back. Thank you for coming. Did you have any thoughts or observations based on with the Washington State Department of Commerce? Ecology, yeah, the funding department.
Yeah, I had some, I was preparing to write them up and get them to you guys.
Okay, well then maybe this isn't the forum necessarily.
I'd be happy.
Okay, all right. And we won't put you on the spot. But
You can do all the time.
thank you for being here. But would you like to hear some comments from the public?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go.
Question. I've heard of lead, arsenic, PCBs as being contaminants. What's with the copper?
Copper is a contaminant that ecology is concerned with in the water, and has determined that it's a substance that they want to reduce. Is that
Is that considered heavy metal?
yeah?
And as was noted, we really don't know how much copper is in our effluent. We would have to test it, but the presumption is that, as most cities it proves out, and correct me if I'm wrong, copper is somehow in the system. Maybe it's old copper pipes that were de rigueur of the day, but now not. So who knows? But we would definitely need to test to see where we're at as far as our copper quantities. Another question? Yeah.
I would just like to comment that I'm disappointed that it will now cost $11,000 for a new residence once this is in. Because you put $6,500 on the connection fee. And if you add water to that, it's $45, give or take a nickel.
But that's presuming that council
Goes
accepts
with-
that
Accepts
strategy.
that.
Yeah.
And the $97 in that column, is that added to what we currently are paying?
No,
That's
this
the
is
total.
this is $39 added to the $58 that you're currently paying, for a total of $97. And that's a good point. The connection fee increase does not play into the totals at all. It's separate. I didn't want to put a connection fee on there and have new connections pay a high connection fee based on the loan amount, and then have to pay a higher rate to pay off that same loan amount. It's sort of double dipping for new connections. And so all I did was raise the connection fee according to inflation, and that's totally separate, and you can do it or not.
With this new system, would that require special education, additional employees to care for the new system and regulate the new system? Are we looking at adding bodies to care for this?
The system would be operable with one full-time operator. I think now what the city uses is a part-time operator or operator that is part-time at the wastewater treatment plant and part-time doing other things. So this would require additional time. The system itself would be very easy to operate, wouldn't require a whole lot of extra training. Like I mentioned, there's some maintenance that would have to go on in terms of those wetlands and mowing and cleaning up that, but that's not anything that would require additional skill sets, just time.
The thought occurred to me. Did you have
I was just going to ask if I could get a copy of this. This table 11.1 is different than 11.1 in our book. The
Yes.
numbers are different.
Yep.
Okay.
No, and that was based mostly on Kathy's comments, and I went back through and changes. So yes, I brought copies.
Thank you.
The thought occurred to me that it may be common knowledge to members of the council, but maybe not so much for the public. But the city of Vader has more developable land within our city limits, infill property, than Toledo and Winlock have. And so if we were to successfully pick one of these, we have already expanded our potential in-growth to the city of Vader from 210 houses to 1,265 homes with our water system, because the county has gotten grant funding to build a second water storage unit, 250,000 gallons. If we successfully come into compliance with our waste treatment system, I don't have a specific number to share with you, but maybe you do, I don't know. But my prediction would be that we would be a much more attractive location for infill with this facility. And so, in my mind, the 490 potential customers would have a real impact on the long-term monthly rates of this waste treatment plant. So it's not something to be just dismissed arbitrarily. We need to market the community. We'd hopefully have something that would spark a catalyst of economic growth to entice the commercial development and people to want to come live here. But I think it's entirely possible. So I just wanted to throw that out there for collective awareness. Yes, and then.
I didn't notice, as Leona was mentioning it, but I don't notice any O&M costs, operation and maintenance costs included in this. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is just capital cost.
Okay.
There is a revised total life cycle cost in the, it's not revised because it didn't necessarily change.
Okay.
But the O&M costs are included in the report.
Okay.
Right. But if it's only one employee, that would be fairly comparable to what we have now. So I would hope that it would be within our budget.
There would be additional electricity costs, some additional chemical costs, but
And we should bear in mind that you could give us maybe a precise number, but for the past several years, the city of Vader, we've been within our budget means. We've been accumulating funding in the waste treatment and replacement fund, which has accrued. How much is in that fund at the end of this year? Well, I would
think
say
it's over 200,000
it's
right
about
now.
$250,000 that can be applied to this, and that's a tribute and a testament to the efforts of this city council and others over the past 10 years to assist in this long-term solution. So we can add that to the...
and that wasn't taken into account. So
I
that would
figured so.
lower.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, time constraints. One more comment?
Well, they answered my one question that asked me. The other one was, does this all include Enchanted Valley?
No.
Just Vader? So we've got 1,000 homes in Vader?
Huh?
There's 1,000 homes in Vader?
210 homes. Yeah.
Oh,
Currently.
potential, okay, I didn't hear you say
So
the potential.
the jump from 210 to 490 does assume that at some point Enchanted Valley may connect, and that's part of that jump. Doesn't have to be Enchanted Valley; it can be growth within the city.
Okay, I misheard you. What it was.
I know that we're all assimilating this, and so we'll ensure that
I'm
people should.
picturing, I'm going, where's their thousand homes?
Goodness sakes.
Because when you're saying we improve.
Yes. My word. Okay. Well then, thank you very much. And
You're welcome. Thank you.
we'll assimilate all of this. Appreciate your report. Okay. All right. Well then, let's now proceed with. Would you like to take a minute and disassemble this?
If you don't mind.
Not at all. Can we help you at all?
I'll do it pretty quickly.
Is there anything to unplug?
Just needs to unplug it from the table.
thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, okay, well, with that presentation, we'll now proceed with the public comment portion of our agenda. So we have
And we have 5 people signed up.
okay,
First is Donna Rogers.
great.
Donna Rogers, Kent Street, Vader. I'd like to ask the council to take a look at ordinance 2014-13. In my opinion, I think there are places in this that is really harsh for Vader. There's some in here about the exemptions to this ordinance. This is a junk vehicle ordinance. There's a part in here that says these are exemptions, but if you have this vehicle or part thereof is completely enclosed within a building in a lawful manner, that's the only place you can put a vehicle apparently. A lot of people in town don't have garages. And in that same thing, it's saying that temporary tarp garages and carports do not satisfy this exemption. These little temporary carports and temporary tarp garages are everywhere. I don't see a problem why that has to be in there or can't be removed. And there also, in another part down here, they have tarps and makeshift covers do not meet the requirement. So you have to have a specific expensive manufacturer-made car cover for a vehicle, apparently, to cover it. You can't use a tarp or a makeshift cover for that. I think that's kind of harsh. And then there's another part in here where investigation and notice of violation. It says the mayor or the designee can come on your property and investigate your premises without your permission, just because they want to. I was looking in the RCW today, and apparently after you've gone through all the court things to get all of this removed, you're actually supposed to come up with a warrant of abatement to be able to do that, to remove whatever vehicle is on there. And then there's also this huge fine back here of $500 a day for each infraction you're written up on. You know, Vader's not Seattle or Beverly Hills or any place like that. This is a low-income community. And a lot of people are on fixed incomes, and a lot of people are just low income. And I think that's probably over half of the population here. That there's some way that that can't be revised, the $500 a day. The one where they started out with the RCWs in MRSC, I was looking at least the first day is $100. Second day is $2, and the third, and by the 5th day it's up to $500 for each violation. And I know there are a lot of people in town that probably aren't able to get rid of some of their junk vehicles physically or financially.
Okay, that's, the 3 minutes is up.
Am I done? Okay.
Thank you. Next.
Okay, next is Cindy Radcliffe.
Cindy Radcliffe, 227th Street. Everybody agrees that code enforcement is necessary. When you have burned out vehicles or you have burned out houses or houses that have fallen down, yes, they need to be cleaned up. But the enforcement also needs to be fair and equitable. What's good for one is good for everybody. And when you have people that are getting notices of violations and they're being picked and chose, and it's not equal for everybody, that's not fair. And I know that there's a lot of places in town that need to be cleaned up. But the code enforcement ordinance that the city council approved is so broad and arbitrary that almost anybody here qualifies for a notice of violation. I went and looked at every one of the city council places, people's homes, and every single one of you has an instance or some kind of situation that would qualify for a notice of violation. Whether it's overgrown vegetation, whether it's a car that's sitting in your backyard. Love your VW bus.
It's my son's.
Oh, very nice. Whether it's just any kind of vehicle that appears not to operate, those are things that other people in town are getting notices of violation for. And not only notices of violation, but they're racking up tens of thousands of dollars in fines and fees. That's not fair and equitable. And if you guys have things going on in your property and you're not getting anything. So what I'm suggesting is the city council takes a look at that ordinance. It's 2017-02 and make it so it's fair and equitable for everybody. And make it so, like Donna Rogers was saying, it's not so monetarily offensive. Just to contest an allegation by the city that you have a violation, you have to come up with $500 just to say, I don't agree. And that's, most of us don't have $500 sitting around. You know, people on fixed incomes just cannot come up with that in the 10 to 15 days that they're given. So do something. I don't care what it is, review the ordinance, come up with some other kind of fees, make it fair and equitable for everybody. Look at what Winlock and Toledo and Napavine and Castle Rock have. I can tell you right now it's nothing like what we have. It's a citation type of system where they get a ticket and they go sit before a judge and they can argue their case and they don't have to come up with $500. Put some oversight over the program. Put some education and training for the people that are running this program. That's very necessary that the people who are doing the oversight and the people that are doing the enforcement have some kind of training, some kind of education so they know what the rules and the laws are. And again, do something. Review these ordinances, because if you guys who take care of your properties, every single one of you have nice and neat and tidy properties, but if you guys have violations, you can imagine what some of the other people have. Protect the citizens that you are in those positions to serve from overreaching, overzealous, and unfair code enforcement staff.
Thank you. Okay. Next.
Judy Costello. Judy Costello, 709A, Vader. Cindy said everything that I was going to say. I wanted to urge the council to rescind all ordinances that have anything to do with this code violation, the old cars. Rescind it, please, and sit down as a candidate for council. I really would love for it to be available when I get up here, that we can sit down and talk it over and maybe come up with some better plan of how to enforce this, because it is really, really harsh on our community as it is causing a big riffle everywhere. I did investigate, and yes, a fine is the way to do it, because then they have to go to court. Our sheriff would go out and give Donna a fine, and it would be X amount of dollars. She would then have to go to court and pay that fine and make her situation better. And if she didn't, she could get to go to jail over this. And to me, that's a little bit more impressive than a home in town that's already racked up over $500,000 worth of fines. That just makes no sense at all to me or anyone else. And I think if you look over the ordinances, I think you'll agree that we can all work together at it and try to figure out something that will work for our community better. Because again, we're not Seattle or other town. Thank you very much.
Okay. Wonderful.
Douglas Williams.
Douglas Williams, 626 G Street. I have some questions for the people up front here. And
remember number 4, no questions shall be asked of the council members except through the chair. So
okay,
just pose the questions. It'll be good.
And my questions are fairly short, and I'd like the 3 minutes waived because the answers may be extended. It may take some kind of explanation. Okay. Your city clerk here, Jill, left early for a luncheon on October 31. Would you please give us a report on this luncheon?
Pardon me, Mr. Williams. That comes into the personal remarks.
She
with
was
regard-
on
Yeah, but
our
with
company's
regard to
city time, wasn't she?
city employee, I'd be more than happy to address those questions for you.
Okay.
We don't address questions in a public city council meeting regarding a city employee. If any such questions arose,
Okay, I will ask you.
just so you know, it would be in an executive session.
Would you give a report on this meeting? Or have her give a report on the August 31 meeting?
I would be more than happy to address your question after the city council meeting, for sure.
She did it on city time.
Okay.
This was at the Castle Rock City school board meeting, and she read a statement, and I was wondering why the mayor wasn't there to give it his own speech. Do you have some kind of a second job that maybe we should be aware of?
I'd be more than happy to address that question after the public comment, after the meeting's over, actually. So, go ahead.
This next bunch of questions is concerning the lot at the corner of 8th Street and 6th. This is across from the Assembly of God Church. It's come to my attention that there were no permits issued for the work performed. Why were there no work permits issued? Who gave permission to pave the lot without any permits being issued? Was L&I, that's Labor and Industries, informed of that there was an 8-year-old running a camper there? Did the city issue permits for the dump trucks to deliver their products? This is a weight issue. And there is a fee for that. Where is the engineering report for the relocation of the storm drain from the east side of the lot to the north side? Are there different standards for permitting? One for friends and one for everybody else? Why was there a do not occupy statement posted for the project when the problems were discovered?
Your time has elapsed.
And is the
But
city
Mr.
trying to
Wilkes,
collect fees?
I'd be more than happy to meet with you to address those questions.
We'll talk with you over here, go on.
Okay.
Talk
Pardon
to
me,
us
but
later,
this is
okay?
the city council.
We're on the same page.
Sorry. Okay, very good. Thank you. Next.
Good job.
Okay, and next.
Lastly is Jason Rayfield.
I'm gonna have to pass. I'm gonna have to, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, very good then. Well, thank you for your comments, and I think that we can proceed. I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
I'd like to say that I'm happy to see everyone here. You know, for 3 years we worked on these ordinances, and we had public meetings and workshops and took public comment night after night after night.
Yeah.
And it's great to see everyone here finally to voice your opinion on these ordinances that you don't like. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, appreciate that. Okay, let's proceed with our agenda. So city business, we have one item, which the council is to consider the 2018 budget calendar. So you should have a copy of that. If you'd like to go over that.
Yes, I would be happy to. So as part of our budget cycle, we are required to have 3 public hearings. The 3 public hearings can happen during our council meetings, so that's how this proposed calendar is scheduling them during a public meeting. We have 1 workshop scheduled in October. That is scheduled right now at 5:00 p.m., so that's the hour before. However, council can decide if they want to change that. There are opportunities to have additional workshops if council wants them. We didn't schedule them The mayor said, don't just schedule one and then council can decide as we go. Workshops don't have the same publication requirements that public hearings and things do. So those are ones that we can kind of call as we need them. If council decides that you want to have them. One of the fun things about having our council meetings on Thursday nights is that we always run into Thanksgiving every year. And then there's always fun around the Christmas holiday as well. And so we propose that we cancel the Thanksgiving Day council meeting and bump it to the following Thursday, which is the 30th of November instead of the 23rd. And we're proposing that if we can get the budget passed in December at the December 14th meeting, that we would not have to have an additional meeting that month and allow people time off for the holidays and the end of the year. We tend to have a lot of people wanting to be gone at that time. So you guys had a chance to look at this, and it just explains what the different meetings are, and they're all required except for the workshops are not required but recommended. So we've got the one in there, and if this looks good to you, great, then you guys can just say, yep, I'm happy with it, move forward. I don't know that you need to have an official motion or anything, but if this doesn't look good to you, let's make some suggestions and get it changed to what works for you guys. So this is just the mayor and my idea of what works for us. Let's see what works for you.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Any thoughts or observations on this proposed budget calendar?
Works for me.
Works for you? Okay, and now you probably can't see that, Mike, I suppose.
So I have it on my phone. The only issue I'll have is the 12th of October, but I should be able to be there via telephone.
Okay, great. Okay, any other observations?
On this, but can I back up a little bit and make a comment?
Regarding this agenda item? Well, generally in a city council meeting, you address the agenda item, but being a council member, feel free.
We finish this and then.
To finish this and then address that topic. So, any other thoughts or concerns? Okay, very good. Then I would suggest that we proceed with this budget strategy in mind. Okay, now,
I just want to thank Cindy. I know that her and her husband actually went out and took their time to help get one of the old vehicles out of somebody's yard. And since we have so many community members here, all get together and help these people that are struggling. If you have the ability to move an old vehicle for somebody, you know, that's a great thing to do. Help them do it. As a community, you can eliminate a lot of this that's going on.
good point. Okay.
But thank
Well,
you, Cindy. Thank you for taking the time to do that.
With that, we're good. We've covered this is not an agenda item, and so we are officially completed with this city council meeting. So that's the way it is. And this meeting is adjourned at 7:14 p.m.